Good evening, folks, and welcome to this week's episode of Beer Reading with Sean Connors. And as you can see, the beer I have today is Flurricane. Talk about that in a second. Just bear with me for 1 second, please. I want to mute my phone. Alright, so this is Flurricane Snowmageddon Pale Ale, and this is from Yellowbelly Brewery here in St. John's, Newfoundland. So I'll talk a little bit about the brewery, a little bit about the name, and a little bit about the beer style. Alright, so I'll read the label, see what we can get. Flurricane Yellowbelly Snowmageddon Pale Ale. It's a 1 liter bottle, 6.5% alcohol, all natural, unpasteurized, keep refrigerated. Unpasteurized I'll get to in a second. On the side they say, on top of a solid and evident bitter base, this beer leans heavily on the hops Emilio, Citra, and Mosaic as both late and dry hop additions. The integration of these hops with the big malt backbone is elegant and balanced with a lingering bitter finish. The balance realizes strength, presented unfiltered, may throw a 7. Alright, so there's a best before date, and that's really important because unpasteurized beer, basically as the name suggests, it's not pasteurized. So basically when the beer is bottled, the yeast is still alive. So it's kind of like a second fermentation. We've had other beers in the past, we talked about the second fermentation. But the thing with this one is, it's not a second fermentation because the first fermentation hasn't really finished. That's why it's unpasteurized. And because it's unpasteurized, the shelf life of an unpasteurized beer, the window is a lot shorter than a regular beer. And as this one says, it's best before April 23rd, 2020. So you probably get a month or two, but that's about it. Alright, what else can I say? As I said, 6.5%, so it's a little bit higher than a regular beer, but not much. The name Flurricane Snowmageddon, that comes from, actually, back in January here in Newfoundland. We had 100 centimeters of snow in basically one night. It was a pretty bad storm. We got 100 centimeters pretty well one day. It ended up being a state of emergency here in St. John's for a better part of a week. And as long as I've been alive, 50 years, that was the longest state of emergency I've seen. We had a storm back in the 80s. I think it was more of an ice storm than a snowstorm. That resulted in, I think it was a day or two, and we had a state of emergency. So there you go. That's where the name comes from. Now I'll pour it up, give my glass a quick cold water rinse as per usual. It's got one of the old-fashioned bottle tops here, and to be totally honest, I can't remember the last time I had one of these. So, I'm not really sure what they call these, the flip, I think the flip stoppers or something along that lines. I can't remember last time I seen one of these beer balls, and as a result, this one has normally you return the bottle, you get 10%, this one has $2.50. And as soon as interesting enough, as soon as I open it, I can see a little bit of yeast around the inside of the top here. A little bit of water here from when I rinse it off. I'll pour it up. And it's probably going to be cloudy because, as I said, the yeast is still alive. As I said before, a lot of times with a second fermentation, because of the live yeast, a lot of people will actually leave a little bit in the bottom, and some people call it the toenails, like an inch or so in the bottom, which a lot of times contains the live yeast. Other people, they'll just pour it in the glass and drink it away. See, to me, right off the get-go, I smell that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of an IPA. And I guess, it is a pale ale. But it's definitely hop forward. You can definitely taste the hops, or smell the hops. I'm assuming you're going to be able to taste them. And it's cloudy as I expected. Definitely taste the hops. What do they say about the hops there? Beer leans heavily on the hops, and they say the type of hops. And they both have late and dry hops addition. So definitely tasting a little bit like an IPA for me. A little bit about Yellowbelly. As I said, it's a brewery here in St. John's, Newfoundland. Specifically, they're down on the George Street area, and if anybody in Canada, especially Eastern Canada, you've definitely heard of George Street. It's a party district. It's a street, nothing but pubs, clubs, bars, whatnot. The name Yellowbelly is kind of interesting one. Back in Wexford County, I believe it was the 1700s, King George V time anyways, there was a hurling match the king was watching against Wexford and I believe an English team. And the Wexford boys, in order to identify themselves as the Wexford boys, they tied a yellow sash around their midsection, around their belly. And they won the match, and at the end of the game, the King George III made a comment. He said something about those yellow bellies did really good or something along that line. So the name stuck. And a lot of guys from Wexford, they immigrated to Newfoundland for the fishery at the time. And they would hang out in the area where the Yellowbelly is now, and they continued the thing about wearing the yellow sash around their midsection, around their bellies. So the name Yellowbelly stuck. So back in 2008, when they opened up the brew pub, they went with the name Yellowbelly. Another little note, the brewmaster there, really, really well known. His name is Liam McKenna. He's an Irishman himself. I don't know he's from Dublin, but he worked in Dublin as a brewmaster, my understanding, and I got that from The Overcast Guide to Beers of Newfoundland. It's a book specifically, I'll just zoom in so you can see it. Talks about all different breweries here in Newfoundland. So Liam McKenna is a brewmaster there at Yellowbelly, and is really well known as an exceptional brewmaster. So much so, the story in the book goes that when he was in Dublin, he was such a force to be threatened with regards to the brewery that the Guinness Brewery actually tried to convince bar owners in the Dublin area not to carry his beers. That's the way the story in the book goes. So you know you're doing things right when the Guinness Brewery tries to stop you from brewing beer. Alright, so as I said, it's a pale ale. And pale ale, originally, it was pretty well a generic name for anything that wasn't dark. Back in the 1700s, that area, most of the beers in England at the time were dark beers. So pale ale, the lighter beers came in and everything was known as pale ale. Nowadays, I mean, pale ale is pretty well excuse me for a second, sorry about that, is a pretty well they say hop forward beer, quite bitter and often is copper colored, as you can see by here. And I mean, you think of IPAs, your typical pale ale, you also got your Indian pale ale, you got American pale ales, or English pale ales, English bitters, if you've ever heard that name, they're solid pale ales. Belgium has their own pale ale. There you go. Alright, so I got to give this one a rating out of 5 as per usual. As my normal ratings, a 1 is a drain pour it, don't like it, can't finish it, got to pour it out. A 2 being not a fan, but I'll finish it. A 3 being a good beer, a 4 being a very good beer, and a 5 being the best beer ever. Now with that being said, I'm not a big fan of overly bitter beers such as IPAs and whatnot. I don't mind them, but they're not my go-to beer. As I said before, I'm more of I love trying all different beers, doesn't matter what kind, but my preference leans towards more lagers and ales. But like I said, I love trying new ones. Definitely a lot of hops in this one. So if you like a hoppy beer, by all means, give it a try. To give it a rating, I think offhand, I'm actually going to put the stopper on that. I think offhand, I'm going to give it a 3, which means it's a good beer. So it's not a great beer, and these are just my own personal opinions, so you know, they're not gospel by any means, but I think 3, making it a good beer, I think I'm good with that. It's not one that I would actually, you know, oh my god, I can't wait to have another, but I'm definitely enjoying it. Even though it is hoppy, and hoppy's not my go-to beer type of thing. But it's definitely a good one to try. And if you like hoppy beers, by all means, you'll probably give it a 4 or even more. There you go, folks. It's the first beer for March. If you missed it, March I'm going to designate as Newfoundland Beer Month. So I've got 3 or 4 different beers from Newfoundland for this month. And this is number 1. So you go, folks. Yellowbelly, the Flurricane, the Snowmageddon Pale Ale. 3.0. Until next beer, as always, enjoy responsibly. Cheers.